Okay, so I have been talking about an experiment that I'm going to try, and today I'm going to get started on it.
Kiss of metal. That is rock and roll poetry.
So the conversation came up on one of my videos about how you can link a bezel that you've made to a gemstone, especially when you have a whole load of bezels that you've made and you want to solder them all at the same time. It's then an absolute nightmare when you are trying to figure out which bezel was meant for which stone, and you keep on trying them until you kind of think you got the right fit, and there's always one that doesn't fit quite right and you just whack it in anyway. So the most obvious answer is to make a marking on the bezel and have a marking either on the bottom of the stone, or you could make a marking on a piece of paper and have the stone next to that, but something that identifies that bezel to that stone. So you could etch it on the inside of that bezel that you're doing. So you could maybe put 1 line, 2 lines, 3 lines, but it's quite hard to see, especially once you've soldered it and if it's very small. So my plan is to find something that will mark the silver. Now this, whatever we use to mark it, has to endure the blowtorch heating and soldering the metal. It then has to cope with being put in the pickle pot and the acid on it, and just generally being wet as well. So it has to go through quite a process, and we have to try and find something that can go through that whole process and still survive the journey. So I have got a few pens. When I say a few, I've got 9 different ones that I'm going to try on 9 different bezels and see if any of these can survive the process. So we have got a laundry marker, a porcelain marker, a classic Sharpie, a high temperature pen, the Impress Art enamel marker, an acrylic permanent marker, a special plumber's marker, Tipp-Ex, and a chalk marker as well. So I thought I would just get any kind of marker, every single marker that I could think of that might be quite hard wearing and may not come off in the process. So I'm going to make 9 bezels, and we're going to try all 9 of these and do the whole process and see at the end of it if anything has left a mark on the silver. So what I'm going to do with each one is put a little mark on the inside of the bezel wire, and of course I've got my sheet that I will be soldering the bezels onto the back plate, and we will see if there's anything out of those that sticks and holds the whole way through, because that might make life a little bit easier when you're soldering multiple ones, and it might be easier to identify than a little score that you've made on the inside. So fingers crossed something works. I really hope something does. If it doesn't, then at least we've tried, and we know that the only answer is to make a little score in the metal with a scratching tool. Anything, like you could use like a soldering pick, for example. But let's try it anyway, and see if anything works. example of why this would be really, really handy. So even though I have got 4 of these stones and 4 of these stones, which are exactly the same size, they're not identical. They're not. So like when you make your bezels, I've just been trying the 4 different ones that I've made, and some fit for some stones and some not for the others, because they are all slightly different. And even though you'll buy a batch that say that they're like 8mm by 6mm, they're not all exactly the same. So this would be really handy if it works. Fingers crossed. So I have everything ready to start putting everything onto the back plate and then solder it all together. So I've put on a bit of paper, I've laid out the stones and then the relevant bezel that fits that stone next to it. I've also laid out all the pens here. I've put them in order of thickness, so these ones are finer. I'm going to use these for the smaller bezels, and then they get a little bit chunkier and chunkier, and then I can use the bigger ones for the slightly larger stones, just to make it easier for now, for the experiment. Right, so I'm going to get started laying them all out, and then as I go, I'm going to label them like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then next to the number, I will be putting what pen I've used, and then I'm going to write that number. I've decided to put it on the base so it's really nice and clear and we can see whether it's worked or not. Let's have a go. So you can see the only one really that is really noticeable is number 9, which is the high heat pen. So yeah, that it was a more defined 9, but I touched my finger on it, and when it was wet, it would smudge. Let me see now when it's dried. Yeah, see, the thing is, it smudges, so it does leave a mark, and it would mean that you could like mark them back up. I suppose the good thing is that it comes off, so you'd be able to like wipe it off if you had like a translucent stone and you didn't want to see the mark there. So that one leaves a mark. Surprisingly, Tipp-Ex, that has actually stayed, which is pretty good. And yeah, I think that's quite visible actually. And the good thing is that it's not too visible, that you could maybe have a translucent stone on there and it wouldn't show through. So yeah, Tipp-Ex is like not too bad. The second one, which was the laundry one, unfortunately it didn't, well, you can just about see it, but it didn't really handle it super well. And this one was the Sharpie, which was rubbish. This one was the porcelain one, which again didn't handle having that done. Number 5 isn't bad. What was number 5? Is the chalk. So again, like that kind of white is similar to the Tipp-Ex, where you can still see the number. So those work really well actually. Number 6 is the enamel, which didn't work. You can't even see anything left over there, no residue or anything. Number 7 is the plumber's pen. Oh no. Well, good job I didn't bet any money on it, eh? And then number 8 is the acrylic pen, which has left a little bit of a mark on there, actually. But I would say, personally, the Tipp-Ex is pretty good, and the chalk pen is pretty good, and the high heat one. So maybe a success, kind of a success. It was definitely really fun to do. Here we go, I'll show you, you can see it with the light there. So number 1 was the Tipex, number 5 was the chalk pen, number 8 is kind of visible, that was the acrylic pen, and then number 9 was the heatproof one. Yeah, for me, I would say the real winners are Tipex and a chalk pen as well. These were also the cheapest. This was the most expensive at about £10. These were literally about £1 to £2. So awesome, I think that might work. I think it could be handy. Thank you so much for coming along for the ride today. Like I said, I found that really fun, and if you found that useful too, then awesome. Please let me know if you did. That would be really, really nice, and that would like super make my day. But otherwise, I am done for the day. I'm going to pack up and I will possibly see you guys tomorrow.